Third world, to the imperialist countries, including Britain, France, Germany, United States, where people did not sing to the name of President Ho Chi Minh. He was known affectionately as Uncle Ho, and he genuinely was an uncle to us. And so it's very important to have the Vietnamese comrades here. Secondly, we have with us Comrade Len Aldous, who's literally devoted his whole life to the question of solidarity between the British people and the Vietnamese people. He has been going, he tells me, every year since 1989 to Vietnam. He goes and tours the whole country and actually is able to report back on the effects of the war on the Vietnamese people. War ended in 1975, and they're still, 35 years later, dealing with the effects of that war, the defoliants like Agent Orange, and a number of other, napalm, and the various brutal methods that the humanitarian and freedom-loving United States used against the Vietnamese people, as indeed they used, of course, earlier on against the North Koreans and anybody else who comes in their way, as they have used in Iraq, and where they have killed a million people, all, of course, in the name of freedom. So it's very important to mark these anniversaries because they're not rituals. They're not something that we do because we've got nothing better to do. These are things that we need to know because they're not just part of the Vietnamese history, they're part of our history as well. Living in an imperialist country, I think the only thing we can do is to say to the Vietnamese comrades, we're ever so sorry that our dastardly ruling class was with the American imperialists in waging that war, and in whatever way we can do to make amends, we shall do that. Thank you so much. Comrades, just like to make a few remarks to get this meeting going. I think really, in many ways, my remarks are superfluous after you've seen this film, because anything I say is puny and insignificant compared with what you've seen. Here is the story of one very small place in Vietnam, on the borders of the then divided country between North and South Vietnam, and the heroic contribution it made to the liberation of the whole of Vietnam and the reunification of the country through the expulsion of American imperialists. Just to get the idea of what this war was, multiply it by tens of thousands of such villages that actually took part in the struggle to liberate Vietnam. Americans were very proud to be killing people. They brought up the latest killing machines, and of course, as the film shows, B-52 were their pride. And the Vietnamese were able to shoot down even B-52s. It's worth remembering that one of the B-52 bombers was John McCain, the present senator of Arizona, and also the one who was defeated in the presidential election a year or so ago. John McCain in the United States of America is regarded as the hero of the Vietnam War. Actually, he's a war criminal. He brought death and destruction to the Vietnamese people. He was shot down. Mind and natural reaction, and that of most justice-loving people would have been, he should have been lynched and made mincemeat. But the Vietnamese people were so kind, they kept him in jail. And by the standards that the Vietnamese people were subjected to, he had a very comfortable life. And since then, stories have been made as to how the Vietnamese tortured him. I don't know if they tortured him, but what did he expect? Did he expect to be greeted as a hero of Vietnam, somebody who brought death and destruction, for which he ought to have been welcomed as a great guest of the Vietnamese people? At the end of the war, they did release him. And this is how imperialist history is written. In America, whenever McCain was referred to, even by his opponent Obama, he was referred to respectfully as an American war hero. He is not a war hero, he's a criminal. But what the Vietnamese War did show was, in the end, no matter how sophisticated the machines, Victory belongs to people who are prepared to fight for their freedom, people who are prepared to fight for their liberation. If we had to wait for getting the same kind of sophisticated weapons that our opponents have, we shall wait forever, and that day shall never come. The Vietnamese learned through struggle that everybody could contribute. Old people, young people, even babies when they cried, as the film shows, were actually crying for the battlefield so that their opponents could hear and they could know that the Vietnamese still existed. They refused to die, they refused to submit. Can you just imagine that you are a housewife or that you are a rice grower, and suddenly in the crucible of the battle you are turned into a commander, you're turned into a soldier, you're turned into a general. Every revolutionary period in every country has produced people who were blacksmiths, who were cobblers, who were cooks, who became great generals and great heroes. And Vietnam produced these heroes and heroines in no small number. A woman who would have cooked before is suddenly actually directing the people with anti-aircraft guns how to shoot. And what a joy it would have been to watch such a lady, to direct these sharpshooters and bring down the likes of John McCain to the joy of the surrounding. Of course, humanity grows food to eat. But what a joy it is to say that I'm growing 3 tons of potatoes, one for us, one for the fields because we've got to sow for the next year, and one for the front. We're growing 3 tons of rice, one for us, one for the field, and one for the front. You're actually, even at that time, at the height of the struggle, when there's a life and death battle going on against your enemies, against the invaders, against the predatory imperialists, you go to school in an underground village. Why? Because you're thinking of the future, that Vietnam is bound to be liberated and we have to build a new Vietnam. And you cannot do it without knowledge and without study. So even studying is for the battlefield. Now, when people acquire such an attitude to life, such an attitude to their freedom and their attitude towards their liberation, such people simply cannot be defeated.